guys, welcome to the first edition of the Cherry and Timber Show.
Oh,
Woohoo! Cool. So thank you, Yogesh and Mahesh, for joining, and thank you, everybody. Really thank you a lot for all your comments, your feedback, and your nominations on social media. This is our first show. We didn't even have a social media handle back then, and you guys responded and gave in a lot of really good nominations, and we really appreciate it. So again, Yogesh, why do we have this show?
I think the show is a reason for cricket fans to go down the memory lane and actually cherish everything that we hold dear about the game. Um, and we call it the Cherry and Timber Show because we want to connect the fans to the rich tradition of the game. It doesn't mean that we are only going to talk about the good old past, but we'll also talk about today, and we might also talk about future. But the idea is that the game of cricket has evolved, right? We chose Cherry and Timber because we want to reconnect it with the glorious tradition of the game, right? And
Absolutely.
we'll keep moving forward as we need to.
Mahesh, what do you feel?
See, this is one show that is being done from three different regions of the world. Venu sits in Toronto, Yogesh sits in London, and I sit in Mumbai. So, like what somebody very rightly said, it's a breakfast, lunch, and dinner show. So we can
Absolutely.
all have fun. So wherever you are, you can either have breakfast, lunch, or dinner and enjoy the show.
Yep, absolutely. So I think Yogesh is our official correspondent for anything and everything happening in the England and Wales region. Mahesh will look after Asia, and I'm the most jobless, so I'll probably look after the overall part of the world. Cool.
We'll all have a
So
lot of fun.
absolutely, yeah. So again, like Yogesh rightly pointed, I mean, this show is a completely fan-based show, and of course, cricketers like us or weekend cricketers like us who love the game, who follow it, and who have really had a lot of passion in terms of writing about the game and commenting about the game on social media with friends, with colleagues, with parents, with families. So I think this is the right channel to bring everything together and spell it out to the world.
Absolutely, no doubt about that. And one thing that you missed was we are great watchers of the game. We
Absolutely.
love watching the game, right?
Yep.
We watch the game when it's being played live, then we go
Mhm.
back and watch all the highlights again.
Yep.
That's what makes us the true fans.
Absolutely. Yep. Yep. Yeah, I think on the cost of being called crazy by our family members and our friends, yeah, I think this show is for the guys who are crazy about the game. Cool, guys. So yeah, without taking much of the time, much of your time, I think what I'll do is I'll just quickly share my screen because we have some content on the screen coming up. So let's meet the team. I think, like the old adage in the Hindu mythology, we have, Yogesh, Venu, and Mahesh in the form of Brahma, Vishnu, and Mahesh. And Yogesh, the creator, I'm the protector, and Mahesh is the destroyer of all the logic and everything that goes in on this forum. Yeah. So we'll try to keep it that way, and we'll try to not agree with each other on anything and everything because that's
Absolutely.
not.
That
Yep.
is where the best thing will be, right?
Yep.
You'll get
Yep.
the best product when you agree to disagree on certain things.
Absolutely. Cool. So moving on, let's take guard for today. Today's topic, guys, is the best innings by an overseas batsman on Indian soil in the last 20 years, quote unquote. And the reason why we chose this criteria was not because we did not like what we saw before 2000, but it's just that we wanted to restrict the topic and keep our boundaries short so that we don't miss out on many of those classic innings as well. Because if we keep it too broad, we might, have a potential chance of missing out on certain classic innings played by other players as well. And plus, we chose this because it's the millennial generation. This is where we had almost everything from ODI cricket, Test cricket, and then T20 slowly coming to the picture. So that has also influence in the way batsmanship has changed over a period of time, and it has a telling effect on all three formats of the game. So that's the reason why we chose this topic, and I think we chose India because we have been Indian cricket followers for a long, long time. Many of us had the occasion or the opportunity to kind of actually go to the ground and see these games as well. So I think that's the reason why we chose this topic for our first show. As and when we move along, we'll obviously, have various different topics as well. And yep, sorry,
Maybe
you get something.
also is Venu,
Hmm.
as Indian cricket fans, right? Everybody likes to talk about Tendulkar and VVS Lakshman, Saurav Ganguly and Sehwag. What we also want to kind of acknowledge is that the game of cricket is rich, not only when our team performs well, but it becomes richer when the foreign players actually come in, play on our turf, and actually show us in many ways that there is a way that you can conquer even the challenging Indian pitches. So when we thought of starting this show and kind of the topic to discuss, we didn't want to go just talking about the best of the Indian team, but also give actually a equal weightage and a chance for the opposition players to express themselves and actually bring some of that best some of those best innings to the fore.
Absolutely, makes
And
sense.
a true cricket fan would always want a good cricket match, irrespective of who wins, right? They want
Absolutely.
a match really going to the fifth day, final session, with the closing fielders ready to pounce on the catches. That's what cricket fan would love to have. That's a true cricket fan. We are not fanatics, but we're
Yep.
cricket fans.
Absolutely. At the end of the day, as one of the famous commentators rightly says, cricket is the winner. Yeah. Okay. Cool, guys. Let's go move on. So again, we can't thank you guys enough, the fans. Our topic definitely created a frenzy of sorts on social media. The left one is where I posted for the first time on April the 13th. And, we were looking out for recommendations for the nominations for best innings for this show, and I think you all did a great job in terms of reading the conditions and the criteria, and absolutely being spot on with your nominations. So can't thank you guys enough. As you can see on the right side, more than 190 comments, and this was actually made a couple of days back. And by if you look at today, it would have actually crossed about 220 or 230 comments on that post. And this was also made when we did not have a social media handle or anything on board. It's just that we decided to create Cherry and Timber as and when we moved on with this concept. So thank you guys. I really appreciate it. We also had email nominations, and we set the WhatsApp University on fire. So we had a lot of guys commenting on WhatsApp as well. The last point deserves a slow clap. So I think apparently somebody had put a tracker on us, and they went ahead and published this as an article on their website. So again, it doesn't make me sad. In fact, it makes me more happy, and we are honored that you found this worthy enough to put it as a topic on your website. So again, it kind of reassures our belief in terms of why we chose this topic and why this is such an interesting topic to discuss on the show.
Thank you very
Imitation
much.
the best form of flattery, as they say, so it's fine.
Absolutely, yep. Just one, friendly word of advice from a journalistic ethic point of view. Please change the criteria next time onwards. You can use the topic, but at least put in your own thoughts and criteria. Okay, anyways, moving forward. Once again, guys, this was a very, very overwhelming response on social media. I won't be able to thank everybody individually, but this is the best way of looking at things and showing people how they commented. Some really, really good insights out here, and I think and this is why the show is in place because it's not just us. We are not cricketing experts per se. We are also fans, fanatics, and followers. But there's so many other people out there who have so many good opinions, and we wanted to bring it out on this show as well. And that's what we're going to discuss in the form of nominations also. Not just our thoughts, but also the thoughts of fans as well as followers of the game from various groups on Facebook to Twitter to WhatsApp, and all the mediums, all platforms. Once
Mm.
again, this is another screen showing how people have responded, and so many great innings out here. And now we'll probably come to the meat of the show in terms of discussing, and let's build our innings. Let's look at some nominations, guys. And again, what we had initially quoted on social media was we wanted to discuss the top 5 innings. But what we also realized as and when we went along was that there are so many other innings also which definitely deserve a mention. And we have created a timeline of sorts with not just 5 innings but 10 innings. And what we will
Mm.
do is, because we don't want to kind of restrict our boundaries in this aspect. We want to discuss all the 10 innings, and then individually, myself, Yogesh, and Mahesh, we can give our verdict or declare in terms of which innings we thought was the best. We may have our personal biases as well, but that's fine as long as you have enough logic and as well as facts to back your claim. Fine with it. Let's roll with it. Okay, so let's look at the nomination timeline, guys. So starting from left to right, we have the year 2000. So in the year 2000, the first innings that we wanted to discuss was Andy Flower, the great Zimbabwean wicketkeeper. 232 of 444 in Nagpur. And just before I get to Mahesh and Yogesh, again, this is an innings which does not get discussed that much in cricketing circles because of the fact that now, if you see the current scenario, we don't have Zimbabwe in the limelight in international cricket anymore. But then the Zimbabwe of the late 90s and early 2000s was a formidable unit. Definitely with the Flower brothers, with Neil Johnson, with Murray Goodwin, and the Wittels, and all of those guys. So those guys were really a formidable unit. And playing in India, especially in Test cricket, we didn't have too many teams coming and doing well in that era because we had a lot of really good spinners in our kitty, and we had dust bowls. We had so many things going on in India at that point in time, and it was kind of a final frontier for so many teams. And we all know what Australia and Steve was said about India in terms of being the final frontier. So yeah, so this innings, I would definitely rate it really high. But in the context of or in the when we say our criteria, yes, maybe it might fall short on a couple of aspects in terms of the quality of the Indian attack. Maybe because of having no Anil Kumble or Harbhajan Singh wasn't there, just having Srinath and Agarkar and two spinners in Sarandeep Singh and Sunil Joshi. And I thought that could probably be something which might not get me voting in favor of this innings being one of the top innings. What do you say, Yogesh?
I think Andy Flower played really well in that innings. I think that's first things first. Andy played the spinners well, given whoever the spinners were bowling on the day. And I remember Zimbabwe were following on, and India were expecting the match to sort of wrap up and close. In that series, Andy Flower scored 540 runs across 4 innings, and in each of those innings, he got his minimum score. I think was 55, which was in the first innings of this test. Now, all said and done, I think, when everybody was expecting Zimbabwe to be steamrolled, Andy Flower stood there in the company of Alistair Campbell. He resurrected that innings and they kept batting like there was nothing else to do. And I think one of the things that I remember about this knock is how competently he reverse swept the attack. At one point he played 5 sweep shots. All 5 shots fetched him 4 runs. He'd scored 20, and he cut, he pulled them, he drove them, he did everything possible to the spinners, and practically left not much to the captain in terms of what he could try. That inning, I remember, Saurav Ganguly had to use all 10 men he could use to bowl at Andy Flower and his partners. They couldn't get him, couldn't dislodge him at all. And I think that day, Andy Flower showed that if you had the will, if you had the technique, if you had the intention, you could thwart the Indian spin attack on an Indian track, irrespective of whether the pitch was crumbling or wasn't.
Yep. So just before we go to the next nomination, I had a couple of points to add here. One was, I think we always forget that in this innings, they were actually following on. So they were coming from behind. So that is one.
Just
Second
before
point.
You topic, I'll just have a word here. He batted the entire fifth day, and he didn't throw his wicket away. Which, even if it's mediocre spinners, it's a difficult task on Indian conditions. And he managed to stay there and he batted for almost 544 minutes. And that's hell of a lot.
Absolutely. And there's an old English saying that when in doubt, sweep, not sleep. So, yeah, so I think he absolutely swept all day long, and, and he actually swept and created doubts in the minds of the Indian spinners. And I think that's something which we could use. We could use a few Englishmen coming to our country at this point in time with the lockdown, right? Because sweeping is an essential part of our daily shows now. Yeah.
We could do better, Venu.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's something which we could do better. Yeah. Okay. Anyways, guys, let's move on to the next nominations. In fact, there are two here in the year 2001. This is honestly, this is one of the most difficult ones to choose from. Honestly, because one, both of these innings came, in the same match, and this was a partnership between the two of them, uh, Hayden and Gilchrist. Before I come to Mahesh, I just wanted to add that, from my personal point of view, this was one of the best counter-attacking innings that I've ever seen in my life in Test cricket in India. From a situation of 99 for 5 to come in and play an innings like that, it's phenomenal. And I'll kind of, move on to Mahesh to kind of add to this innings.
Venu, I was fortunate to be there in the ground.
Yep.
And when India batted first, in the first day they got bundled out for 176, and we got ourselves back into the game by picking up 5 wickets for not even 100 runs. They were 99 for 5, and Adam Gilchrist joined Matthew Hayden. He's got this ability to turn the game around in a session, and that's exactly what he did. The counter attack was absolutely top class. There were two spinners, that was Harbhajan Singh and Rahul Sangvi. He played them as if he was playing some club cricketers. Remember, he was playing for the first time in India. So somebody who's come to India for the first time and playing spin bowling finds themselves in a spot of trouble, at least in the initial stages of his innings. But not Adam Gilchrist. He came with a lot of confidence. He swept, cut, drew, flicked, did everything, and he scored a very quick 122 runs.
Yep.
And I think he scored it in 112 balls.
That's right. Yep.
15 fours and 4 sixes.
Yep.
That means 84 runs came in boundary. So you can well imagine the kind of onslaught that he did on the Indian bowlers. And he took the game away from India, and the company of Matthew Hayden, they ran up a huge score, and then it was catching for India.
I think just one more point to add. One more point to add before I come to Yogesh is, it's on Wankhede, with the red soil and the turn and bounce that we get, it's extremely difficult to play spin, especially if your key or your most effective shot is the sweep shot. To sweep against the turn as well as, countering that bounce, that's something he mastered against not just Gilchrist, but even Hayden. So Yogesh, I wanted to ask you a question specifically because we discussed Gilchrist, but how about Matthew Hayden? And, you had a point to make about partnership batting, right? So why don't you go and
I think incredible, really, with the way Matthew Hayden played as well. And I think sometimes for a batsman to excel, you also need somebody else on the other end that will sort of give you breathers every now and again. And there are times when you sort of get a lot of assurance. You also get the much needed pauses so that somebody else can take responsibility while you are regathering your thoughts and concentration, especially in the heat of Mumbai, on a crumbling track. You'd appreciate that to be able to deal with spinners over and over after is a huge mental aspect to it. And to be able to do that, you need somebody who you can rely on, trust, and sort of rotate. And that is where I feel partnership batting is so much more important. Now, when you look at these two innings, and you can choose one of the two, but you must also take cognizance of the fact that Matthew Hayden did it twice over, and he didn't stop there. He also continued across the series and actually, showed that while other teammates
so
couldn't
as you're
quite.
speaking, Yogesh, I've just put up that stat as well on the screen. So not just Mumbai, I've put the 97 in Kolkata and the 203 in Chennai as well. Yeah, so go on.
Yeah, so when you look at that, you'd see that Matthew Hayden wasn't sort of a one-test wonder in that series. And while India actually managed to heroically win that Test series, and we know what happened in Kolkata and
Chennai.
in Chennai to follow, yeah. But Matthew Hayden sort of established as a player who could deal with the Australian tracks, the fast bouncy ones, and he could also grind it out on the Indian tracks. So the versatility that we speak of as a measure of a batsman's greatness, Hayden presented that with his full repertoire. Now, with Adam Gilchrist, one last comment I would make is, when you play spin, and the secret of playing spin in India well, at least on crumbling tracks, is can you effectively reach the bounce of the ball? You would see a few shots in that innings when the balls that were pitched up, Adam Gilchrist was able to sweep them. That told you how immaculate his judgment of the pace,
The length.
the loop, and the length was. And if you can focus that hard, and if you can read that length well and reach the length well, then I think that's half the battle won. So that's my observation on that inning.
Cool. Yep, makes sense and absolutely agree with both of you. So moving forward, We had a bit of a lull between 2001 to 2004, but this, if you ask me, was the actual final frontier. Steve Waugh actually called the 2001 series the final frontier. That could not be breached. But this one, guys, again, there were so many good strategies in place put by the Australians when it came to 2004. They had to rethink their game. They had to rethink their strategies. They had to do things differently. I'll start with Michael Clarke out here. We have two innings nominated for this. I know Mahesh has a lot of good points for Michael Clarke, but what I'll just say that, in the context of the series, and if you look at our criteria, this guy was making his debut. You know,
Mhm.
Playing in India as it is a hard thing to do, especially against good spinners. We had Kumble and Harbhajan on board at that point in time, and Clark coming in Bengaluru and playing the way he did was phenomenal. It was a game-changing innings, and I'll leave it up to Mahesh to describe that as well because he had a really good point to make.
So Michael Clarke walks in at 149 for 4. Capacity crowd, 30,000 people screaming at the top of their voices. And there are two special guests in the stands, his parents. Okay, he walks out and he starts using his feet right from the word go. Now, to use your feet against somebody like Anil Kumble, you need to be extremely fleet-footed because he doesn't give you too much time, right? He bowls pretty fast in the air. But like what you said, in spite of the fact that he was making his debut, he was able to counter Harbhajan Singh and Anil Kumble without too much of a problem. He was right there, either forward or back. He had complete control of the game. So at no point of time did he really look to be, in any kind of difficulty. And when he scored the century, the emotions came out, didn't it? I mean, he thumped the air, did everything, kissed the badge, showed how much it meant to him. When a guy starts playing cricket at a young age, they always dream of playing for the country.
Yep.
Okay. And when you score a century on debut, you can't ask for anything more. Let me tell you that.
And you know what, Mahesh? There's an interesting aspect to that as well. You mentioned about when he reached the century. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think he changed his helmet and wore the baggy green when he was in the 90s.
Yes.
Yep.
And he
And he
picked up one
actually,
mid-wicket and he picked up 2 runs.
which was an act of bravado, if you ask me. But then, yeah, it's something which he's backing up.
Spinners, right? I think he scored the runs of a spinner, so it was
Zahir Khan. He was
Zahir
facing
Khan.
Zahir Khan. Yep. Imagine facing up to Zahir Khan not wearing a helmet.
his mother, tears of joy flowing down her cheek.
Yep.
There was so much of emotion.
Absolutely.
And that day, one thing was very sure. This guy, in his debut match, if he's got so much of confidence, so much of stroke, so much of time, he's going to be there for the long haul. And didn't he? He played very well for Australia. He not only played well for Australia, he captained Australia to the 2015 World Cup and won it for them.
Absolutely.
So I thought that Clarke was born in India.
Yep. Yogesh, what do you have to say about Damien Martin?
Damien Martin, I think one of the most underrated middle order batsmen Australia could have produced. If there was a beauty contest for somebody who could play cover drive the best, Damien Martin perhaps would have won that hands down. But cricket doesn't quite run those contests, thankfully. But I think you need somebody who's really strong in the middle order to hold it together. Somebody who can play the old Australian aggressive way. But if you look at Damien Martin, he was able to adapt his game quite well. And so you see that those innings weren't quite runnable, but where he needed to sort of take time and settle down and get others to play around him, Damien Martin did that quite well. And I think he was also one of the leading run scorers of the series, telling you that it wasn't sort of a one inning wonder kind of an inning, but Damien Martin had a huge influence
On
on
that same
the
point,
result.
Yogesh, there was the second innings, of 97 as well in the same game, like you mentioned in the series. So he set up the game for Australia as well in the second innings with a 97. So imagine what it would have been, having a consecutive 100 in that match, right?
So I think what Steve Waugh couldn't quite do in 2001, Adam Gilchrist and Ricky Ponting together contrived to actually get Australia series win in India. But you'd see those contributions came through a debutant in Michael Waugh and Damien. Damien, yeah. Damien Martin sort of playing in that middle order. Now, one thing I just wanted to add on Michael Clarke, and because Mahesh said he was born in India, Australian selection team had actually come into a fair bit of criticism, whether it was too early to send in Michael Clarke. He wasn't averaging even in 40s that time, but they knew how well he could play spin, and he actually showed you how well he could do that.
Yep.
And everyone knew that Michael Clark was going to be the big thing in Australian cricket team.
Yep.
He just proved
Yep.
them right that day.
Yep.
So great innings, great result for Australia. Both of them working
Absolutely.
together.
Yep.
And
So
Damien
and if
Martin,
we,
I want to add, Venu,
yep.
that Damien Martin is a highly underrated player.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
The guy started playing from 1992 to 2006. The only time that he got to play for Australia was when one of the players would get injured because he had a lot of
Mm.
competition with the Walk brothers and
Yeah.
Ricky Ponting and all that thing. And
Yeah.
there was a lot of criticism on the selection that when
Yep.
Ricky Ponting had a woeful series against India in 2001, they should
Yep.
have included Damien Martin. But
Interesting.
he was born at the wrong time, it looks like, and he had to actually wait for somebody
Yep.
to either get injured or to
Yeah.
be terribly out of form to
Yeah.
play for us.
I think yeah, getting into that Australian side was like, it would have been an achievement of a lifetime. Not just, playing, I mean, not just doing well, but just getting into that side was so difficult, right? And yeah, again, one major difference between these two nominations and the one in 2001 is that these guys won the series, and these were series changing innings as well, both of them.
And he was the man of the series for this tournament.
Absolutely. Yep. Okay, so let's move on to 2005. Our friends from Pakistan have suggested Yunus Khan, and I will absolutely agree with this because, again, it's not easy coming into an Indo-Pak game in that high-pressure scenario, especially playing in India in front of that capacity crowd. Uh, I mean, this innings kind of left me in splits because I definitely feel it deserves to be here. But in the context of the game, and if you see the criteria, I feel the only place where I might feel this may not make my final, top inning is that the pitch wasn't a real rank turner per se. Because if you see the scorecard of that game, they scored over 500 runs, and India chased it down with another big total, and then they came back. I think the game changing inning in this one was the 84 of 98 in the second innings, because he showed that in the first innings he could grind it out and just play a proper classical test innings, but in the second innings of the game on that benign pitch, he actually set up the game for Pakistan by scoring that 84 of 98. So I'll look at this as a package, not just as a single double hundred. So
Yeah.
that's where I'll rate this innings high. So Mahesh, you had something to add?
Yeah. See, according to me, Yunus Khan is a very hard-working cricketer. I
Yep.
mean, you've got somebody who is either very skillful, very talented, or somebody who's very hardworking. So he would be in the same mold as somebody like Rahul Dravid. Okay. So just before this match, he's played 4 innings, out of which in 3 innings he was miserable. He scored a century in one of the 4 innings. So when he came into playing this match, probably he was under pressure, and Pakistan was definitely under pressure because they were one down in the series.
Yep.
So taking into context that, and Pakistan losing 2 early wickets, and then he building the innings along with Inzamam ul Haq, he showed a lot of patience, a lot of resilience. His temperament was fantastic,
Yep.
concentration level fabulous. He showed how to play a good test match innings.
Yep.
Like what he said, he grinded himself in. He did not allow anybody to get him out. But that's the way he's always played. He's
Yep.
very comfortable playing it that way,
Yep.
and he plays all over the ground.
Yep.
He's very comfortable going back or in front. So according to me, it was a very good innings, a very classic innings by Yunus Khan.
Yogesh?
Yeah, just understanding that Yunus Khan wasn't the best batsman in that lineup, and knowing that Inzamam ul Haq was actually leading the charge and sort of playing the second fiddle to him, but obviously scoring more runs than Inzamam ul Haq, understanding the value of the partnership there,
Yep.
and together, I think the impact that they had on the Indian team, we all know the kind of crowd you'd get in Bangalore. Then to
Yep.
be able to in the last match of the series to contrive that partnership, and then bring Pakistan to the brink of victory by actually leading the charge in the second
Yep.
innings. I
Yep.
think full marks to that. And if any of the Indian batsmen were to be able to do that in Pakistan, we
Yep.
would have probably talked about it all our lives. So I think
Yep.
everybody in Pakistan, if they
Yep.
talk about Yunus Khan's performance in Bangalore in much
Yep.
the same way we talk about Rahul Dravid and VVS Lakshman at Kolkata, I
Yep.
wouldn't really be surprised with that. So full marks, Yunus. Well played.
Yep. And I think, is it safe to say that he's probably the Rahul Dravid of Pakistan in terms of
Yeah,
character, in terms of his contributions as well? One of the nicer Pakistanis to play against, if I could say so.
Shades of that, definitely, because at certain points you would have probably given that to Yusuf Yohana. And
Yeah.
I think you'd see that, ultimately India and Pakistan, when it comes to batsmanship, essentially, are
Mm.
not very different teams. And, the way we play is very similar, and you could see
Yeah.
shades of one player into other,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And I think that's just the tradition
Yeah.
of these two countries, and
Yeah.
it's been true in the past, and it'll be true in future as well. We'll always find similarities.
Yep.
And Yunus
Absolutely.
Khan has got no ego. He had no problem in walking up
Exactly.
to Rahul Dravid
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
actually check out whether his
Yeah.
technique was perfect or
Yeah.
not.
Yeah.
Dravid, being a nice guy, helped him in ironing out all his glitches, and he became a much better cricketer. So yeah,
Yeah.
on the field, whatever happens, I think off the field, I think they're much
Yeah,
better
I
players.
think my comment was in that context in terms of one of the nicer gentlemen to have played the game, and a really good guy, absolutely no egos like you mentioned. Dravid has also helped another guy who will come and feature in our nomination. So hold that comment and hold that thought.
Yeah,
Okay, yep. So 2010, one of my favorites.
Yeah.
Hashim Amla, the mighty hash, doesn't need a hashtag on social media to get trending. Okay, sorry, bad joke. So yeah, I think 253 or 473 set up the game beautifully for South Africa. Again, they had won this game. Dale Steyn had completely decimated India in this game, 10-wicket haul. But what I felt was, this was an innings which was completely in control, and the way he played. I mean, the way he generally plays as well. It kind of looks like he's made for playing in India in these conditions. The way he uses his wrists, the way we call ABD the 360-degree player, but Hashim Amla, we all can agree that in his own space, he's kind of Mr. 360 as well, but in a different way. So that's the beauty of our game. It allows the ABDs and the Sehwags to kind of play with flair and flamboyance as well. But then you have the hardworking Amlas, with
mm.
minimum but maximum output. That's how he plays. So yeah, go ahead, Yogesh.
Yeah, with Hashim Amla, on the day when he played well, I don't think bowlers actually knew where to bowl him and how to get him out. I think he was a picture of concentration. He was a picture of patience. He was a picture of humility and commitment for his team. And I think one of the points that Mahesh would probably make is 253 runs, 473 balls, not a single six hit. You know
Yeah.
and that tells you that there are different players who've got different techniques and different means of scoring runs. And Hashim Amla showed you that well, on his day you may do whatever you'd like, you can't
Mm.
get me out.
Shows you how grounded he is. He didn't hit a single six. Yeah. Yeah.
And
Cool.
the good thing about Hamla is when he hits
Mm.
the ball, he
Yeah.
basically just taps the ball.
Yeah.
He doesn't want to hurt the ball. He's
Yeah.
that kind of a batsman who want to hurt the ball. But even when he touches the ball speeds to the boundary like a tracer bullet, like what
Yeah.
Ravi Shastri. Right? I mean, he's got too
Yeah.
much time to play,
Yeah.
like what you both said, that he's got time. He's not partial to any particular area on the cricket
Yeah.
ground. He plays
Yep.
all around. Okay, the
Yep.
flick, the tap down to third man, the
Mm.
glance down to fine leg. He's a very purist kind of a cricketer. I mean, people would
Yep.
love to go and see him.
And
He would come and play this kind of a knock it at the Wankhede Day.
yeah.
People at the MCA stand would get up and applaud and say he's the kind of batsman that we should be producing, because he's not a
Yeah.
kind of player like what Yogi said, hit sixes. He play
Yep.
always along the ground, very correct
Yep.
kind of.
Yeah.
And
And
he
mind
came in.
you, in ODI cricket, he's a different beast altogether,
He's a very
right?
different player.
Yep.
He played for Kings 11 Punjab,
Yep.
and he was hitting the ball wherever he
Yeah.
wanted. See,
Yeah.
because
So.
that basic technique is in place, so
Yep.
he'll always hit the right shot. He'll pick
Yep.
the ball very early,
Yep.
and
Yep.
once see your basics in cricket don't change with the format, right? I mean, you
Absolutely.
still play cricket the way it has to be played
Yep.
till the 15th or 16th over before you start just swinging the bat. Till
Yep.
then, you play proper cricketing shots, and I think he plays proper cricketing shots.
Yep.
I'm a great fan of
Yep.
Hashim Amla. I think
Yep.
he's a delight to watch.
I think if there was an advertisement campaign for adaptability, he'll be my brand ambassador. So
Oh,
yep.
Mm.
Yep.
He could adapt very quickly. And
Absolutely.
remember, he scored those runs when they had lost 2 quick wickets. He built this innings along with Jacques Kallis. So it was
Yep.
not that he walked in at probably 80 for no loss
Yep.
or something
Yep.
like that. So he came in very early, probably in the first or
Absolutely.
second over. And
Yep.
he along with Kallis,
Yep.
built that innings and then took the game away from India. He
Yep.
basically batted India out of the match.
Yeah. In fact, that's one point even we missed out on the Yunus Khan innings. He came in at probably 6 for 2, and then built on
Yeah.
from there. Yeah. So I think that's also another really good factor that we missed out. Okay. So yeah, we all agree Mighty Hash, he definitely features on this list. Now the interesting nominations. Now as we come closer to the years that have gone by. 2012, again, this is a year where there was some phenomenal test cricket played in India by a visiting team in England. And that's why we have two nominations here in the form of Kevin Peterson and Sir Alistair Cook. Peterson, 186 of 233. I'll hold that thought for now. Before we come to that, I would want to discuss Sir Alistair Cook here. Again, there were many nominations for Alistair Cook. There was 176 in Ahmedabad in a losing cause, but then that innings was class apart. 122, the partnership with KP, which we are going to speak now after this. Again, that was another brilliant knock on a rank turner in Mumbai and against a difficult spin attack. Once again, after being 1-0 down in the series, that's the important aspect to consider. Then the third one, and again, the 122 resulted in a win. That's one more thing to consider. The third one, once again, 190 in Kolkata, set up the game beautifully for England, won the game there, and potentially just closed out the series there itself, even before they went to Nagpur for the fourth test. So, what do you feel, guys, Mahesh? Out of these three knocks, in fact, I'll actually go to Yogesh for this one. I want to come to KP to Mahesh because I know you have a lot of points to make for that particular innings. So I think I'll speak to Yogesh first on this innings or this series for Alistair Cook. Is it safe to say that this was Alistair Cook's series altogether?
It was Alistair Cook's series, and let's not forget Alistair Cook was also the captain of that English cricket team. He
Yep.
was also opening for that team, you know.
Yep.
And when you see somebody captaining the team and then opening the team, you know pretty much for a foreign team to do well in India. If you don't have a good start, you put so much pressure on the middle order. Then
Yep.
for Cook to actually stand there and kind of go about in his understated manner, but scoring runs,
Yep.
he actually made it so much easier for the middle order then to kind of play around him and build on the foundation he laid. And it wasn't a foundation laid in just one match, but he did it in two more, and he actually showed the Indian team that there was a way to counter all the spin that we could throw at them, and probably play that better.
Yep.
Needless to say, I think his captaincy was par excellence. He was strategically astute as well
Yep.
in the way he used the spinners. So
Yep.
while we look at the batsmen and the numbers, right,
Yep.
let's not forget that while English team did score the runs,
Yep.
it was the English bowlers who were all over Indian batsmen as a rash.
Yep.
So I think overall, I'd say that phenomenal contribution from Alistair Cook. No wonder he's Sir Alistair Cook.
Yep, and I think it can be safely said that in this series he was leading from the front on all aspects. Captaincy, batsmanship, everything. You could just name it and they had it. And I think there was a lot of preparation which went into this series, if I may remember correctly. I think they probably were stationed in the Middle East in Dubai, and they practiced playing spin on rough conditions and
Yeah.
rough tracks, and they also set up loudspeakers closer to the nets with a lot of crowd noise to get accustomed to actually playing in India.
Get used to it. Yeah.
Exactly, and there was really a very, very good aspect of one more aspect which I wanted to mention here, and I think, and I read it when the series was actually on, that they requested the hotel guys to actually turn off air conditioning in their floor. They made a special request so that they get used to the heat and the ground conditions, and they don't sleep comfortably and then suddenly turn up at the ground in that heat. So so those are the mental aspects or the physical and mental training aspects which goes in the back rooms, and it's like that kind of training is what wins you series in test matches.
Also coming ahead, I think they played at least 2 or 3 preparation matches before they actually played India, and that tells
Yeah.
you that when you're playing in sort of subcontinental continental conditions,
Yeah.
everybody needs to adapt, and the more preparation you can have in the country, the better the chances you give yourselves to do well.
Yep, absolutely. Okay, so
Basically, India
Mahesh,
cooked by Alistair Cook.
yeah, we were cooked by
Absolutely.
Captain Cook. Yeah. So Mahesh, your favorite and everybody's
Yeah.
favorite. This is the innings which received maximum nominations across social media, across WhatsApp, Facebook, Twitter, you name it, and this was featuring everywhere. And I know you have a lot of things to say for this. Over to you.
So it's not only the match. I saw their net practice a day before the match also. So
Okay.
I followed KP from the time he has actually entered the ground one day before the match. Okay, jokes apart, he had an awful match at Ahmedabad. Pragyan Oja had the better of him in both the innings, and the way he got out, a lot of people thought that he just can't play spin bowling in India.
Especially left arm spin.
Left arm
Especially left
spin.
arm spin. Yeah.
Historically, he was not able to play Yuvraj Singh earlier, so
Yep.
he was called him a
Five
five
checker.
shot. Those things have happened. So he was determined, but to come out and score runs. That was very evident because the media said that they wrote out his obituary. They said this guy
Yep.
should not have been taken. A, because he also had a very poor relationship with the media because of his bad boy image. So
Yep.
he was kind of the arrogant kind of guy.
Yep.
So here he comes to Mumbai at the Wankhede Stadium one day before I'm at the ground for something else, and I see him practicing.
Yep. So
He
sorry,
practiced.
Mahesh, one more thing. I think with the media part, I think this was probably his comeback series after that TextGate scandal.
Correct.
Right?
Absolutely.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Yep.
So he comes to the ground, he goes to the nets, bats for about half an hour, 45 minutes, does his routine in the nets, comes out. Then what I see is the most interesting thing. He gets all the spinners, all the net ball bowlers. When teams practice, they get the local bowlers to come and bowl. So all these spinners, he took them outside the net and he batted with them for almost half an hour. And he was not hitting the ball out of the ground or anything of that sort because it was not guarded by any net. So his whole objective was to play straight and along the ground. So the preparation started very well for him. He came to bat after 2 wickets had fallen at 68. And what he showed that day was simply unbelievable.
Yep.
For a guy who a week before was unable to play Pragyan Oja,
Yep.
he was able to hit Pragyan Oja, Harbhajan Singh, and Ravichandran Ashwin with utmost ease.
Yep.
He was aggressive, he was ruthless, and I thought there was a touch of arrogance in his shot.
Yep.
He took out special treatment for Pragyan Oja. He,
Yep.
in fact, smashed 40% of his runs for Pragyan Oja.
Yep.
He knew exactly what he had to do. He
Yep.
played beautifully. He played the drives, the cuts, the pulls, name it, and he played all the shots. It was an absolute treat to watch him. You should give a lot of credit to Alistair Cook because Cook knew that all that he had to do was to rotate the strike and give the strike to KP, and KP would do it. They blew out India, and India just did not know how to contain them.
Mm.
They were in such a situation that they just wanted the innings to get over. They didn't know where the next wicket is going to come from. And they had three spinners, mind
Yep.
you,
Yep.
three quality spinners, experienced spinners, on a
Mm.
pitch that was assisting turn. And I remember when India won the toss, I was sitting at the MCA, and all the uncles out there who have seen cricket for the last 40 years were saying, "Ye match fourth day. 4 day ke aage jayega nahi." They were absolutely right. It went only on the first session of the fourth day, but only thing is the winning team was England and not India. Because
I
they
think it was
India toss,
yeah.
batting first, the last team to bat on that wicket would not be able to chase 150 or 200 runs.
Yep.
Far from it. India were humiliated, I thought, in
Yep.
that.
I
I
think it
think
was a
KP played
classic
blind.
case of the hunter getting hunted, if I could say so.
And you should remember one thing. From nothing, he got the man of the match.
Yep.
And 11 years back, Adam
Yep.
Gilchrist scored a whirlwind 122. And in the very next match at Kolkata, he got a king pair. Just goes to show that cricket is a great leveler.
Really good point. Yeah, fair enough. Absolutely. And I think, there was one more debate about this innings. People are asking on social media if this was a rank turner, and if you classify this as a rank turner, why didn't India get wickets? So I think there was a principal difference here. And the way I remember this game was Oja and Ashwin, At that point in time, they were more of, loopy bowlers who bowled slow through the air. And that was their modus
Correct.
operandi of getting wickets. Whereas Swan and Panesar, they actually outbowled our spinners because they were quicker through the air. And this was not a slow turner, but this was a pitch which demanded to bowl quicker through the air and get fast turn, bounce, and then that's how it kind of created a lot of issues for Indian batsmen.
True.
And I didn't, who can forget, Mahesh, you will remember this, the great man Sachin Tendulkar being bowled by Panesar, right?
But
Yeah.
that too, in the first session of the first day's pitch.
Absolutely. And it was a very uncharacteristic dismissal, right? For Sachin. I mean, it's very hard, for cricket fans who have followed Sachin to be, to see him being out in that fashion, playing across the line to a ball which actually turned after pitching straight, So that means that the pitch had a lot of turn in it. Yep.
First day.
Exactly.
First session of the first day, if you
Yep.
could get the ball to turn and
Yep.
beat a batsman of Sachin's caliber, that
Yep.
means there must have been a lot of turn on that wicket.
Absolutely. Yep. Okay, I think there's no two ways to kind of debate this. Everybody agrees. KP and even Alistair Cook, these two were phenomenal innings, and Cook's series was phenomenal as well. Let's come to the last nominations, guys, and this is one of my personal favorites because I have a bit of a personal bias of attending this game and being at the stadium in Pune.
So, Venu, you should be telling us.
Yep.
What was the experience?
Yeah. So again, I remember, going to the stadium and on the second day, I believe, not in the first day Australia batted and I think they were bowled out. And second day when India started playing, I just took a bit of time to reach the ground. And I remember my friends were sitting there and enjoying the game. And when I actually started from home, this was very far away from my place in Pune, and KL Rahul was batting beautifully, brilliantly, and we all started well and stuff. And my friends were waiting at the stands and they were calling me and when are you reaching and stuff. So when I reached there, as soon as I came there, I saw a complete flurry of wickets tumbling. And they were like, yeah, man, you are such bad omen. Why did you come to the ground? And, we spoiled our day. And I was like, okay, I didn't expect this to happen, right? Nobody expected on day two India to be bowled out. And, Stephen O'Keefe and Nathan Lyon just running through the side. And, Steve O'Keefe is nowhere right now. That was like one game where he was completely all over us. So
I don't think he plays the Big Bash also. Does he play the Big Bash?
I think he retired probably by now. I'm not too sure, to be honest. Yeah, but then, I was talking about Test cricket specifically, and I think it was phenomenal, right? The way he bowled and the way the pitch was turning and bouncing, and I saw some really, really good field placement as well. And I think that's one aspect which people miss, which they're not able to see on television that clearly at many a time. When you're at the ground, you're able to see what kind of field placements the captain has actually decided to put for specific players. So, and at one point in time, and I'm not kidding actually, Nathan Lyon was bowling to right-handers with just three men on the offside. There was first slip, there was mid-off, and there was just backward point. The entire cover region was empty. He had left it as a kind of what do you say?
Invitation.
Invitation to kind of drive, and that's where a lot of people faltered. In fact, even to play the drive, a lot of people were scared on that track because it was turning square, bouncing, and whatnot. And that's when Steve Smith came in the second innings. And Australia had lost a couple of quick wickets, I think the openers. And those were the days when David Warner was actually Ashwin's bunny on Indian tracks. So, Ashwin would actually tell him where I'm going to get you out. So that was the kind of arrogance, or I'll not say arrogance, or the dominance that he had over David Warner on turning tracks in India. So, and yeah, exactly. So, and that's when Steve Smith came in. And again, when I saw him play, there was so much of conviction in his footwork. Just like you spoke about Michael Clark in the year 2004. India requires a completely different mindset to play spinners. There are a lot of people who have commented that this innings should not be considered in this elite list because of the fact that there were so many chances given to Indians and they did not take it. He was dropped so many times. But then that's a different topic altogether. I would not want. Personally, I would not feel that's a big factor. Because to survive on that kind of a treacherous wicket, you definitely need a lot of luck. And, you make your own luck by, being aggressive, by playing the right strokes at the right time. I just remember, and I'm kind of digressing here. When I was playing some club cricket in Canada, I scored 100 on a given day. And that was my first 100 here. And that day I was dropped thrice. So again, in different stages of the innings. One was early on, one was when I was in the mid 50s, and one was almost in the 80s or something. So I was almost embarrassed to kind of, go and talk to the opposition, and the umpire was like, "You don't need to be embarrassed. At the end of the day, the scoreboard doesn't say 3 top catches; it just says 100 runs.
Correct.
So that's what it is." So yeah, so I mean, again, I do understand. Yes, he had his own fair share of luck, but then the way he swept the spinners, the way he used his feet, and the way he waited till the last moment to play the ball, that was a classic to watch. And I was in awe of him completely. Like you mentioned about KP, this is an innings which I will always remember. And actually, this set the tone for the series. I definitely felt that this series, along with the 2004 series that they won, this was highly competitive. The 2017 Test series, because we had a win in Pune for Australia, we had a win in Bangalore, chasing 187,
For India.
Australia lost exactly. Then Ranchi was a draw, but again, even that game was interesting because Australia, and I think there's one more inning which Maxwell played out there. It was his first 100, which doesn't get mentioned too much because the game was a draw, but that was a quality innings too. But it may not have been a treacherous track like this one or maybe the Bangalore track. Yeah, and then the Dharamshala game in which India won and Ajinkya Rahane was the captain. So yeah, so this series was phenomenal. They set the tone by winning the first game, and nobody expected Australia to win, especially on a track where India was bundled out in both the innings. And I was like in awe of this innings, right? I consider this to be, at least in the last few years of watching Test cricket, one of the greatest that I have seen.
So two things I would want to mention of this innings. One, the reverse sweep that he played. It is very difficult to play the conventional sweep on that kind of a ground. But for somebody to play the reverse sweep, the guy must be really, really confident and skillful. Secondly, the most difficult bowler to play on these kind of wickets is Ravindra Jadeja, because he's very quick in the air.
Oh, yes.
And he played Jadeja. Finally, Jadeja got him out. But till he got him out, I think he played him very comfortably. India played with three spinners, mind you. We had Ashwin, Jayant Yadav, and and he played all very comfortably. And then he had to chase a huge score, and they could never.
And I was actually watching it from the straight stand, where I was actually looking at Jadeja bowling, and I was behind Jadeja's arm, and the way he was bowling, you mentioned he was quick through the air. It actually looked like Zair Khan bowling to me, because when you're on the ground, right, on television and on the ground, it's a completely different perspective. You feel that it's just zipping through, zipping through, zipping through. And there were so many times that he played and missed, played and missed, played and missed. But that shows the tenacity of the man and the concentration.
Absolutely. So what happens is, great batsmen forget about what happened in the last ball. Okay. And they try and focus for the next ball. That's exactly what Steve Smith. I also remember he getting beaten so many times. It was a matter of whether he's going to get out the next ball. But the next ball, he would play a fantastic cover drive or a great pull shot, great cut shot, which means he was able to focus very quickly back onto the game after being beaten all ends up. He must have been beaten so many times in that innings, but the guy was phenomenal that day.
So Yogesh, your final thoughts on this innings, and then we'll close out this discussion.
I think, while you've put one innings, but let's remember Steve Smith, like Alistair Cook, had 3 centuries in that series and one shy of 500 runs. My only feeling is that, if he's played that well in that series, we've not seen the best of Steve Smith, and that's a scary thought.
Exactly. Yeah, I wonder when Australia's coming to India next year. What do we have in store?
So watch out, I mean, for all the joy we take from Tendulkar's triumphs in Australia, there would be a lot of joy for Australians for Steve Smith's triumphs in India, and future holds a lot of promise. I just hope that Steve Smith continues to be the batsman that he is. And I just feel that we've seen shades of the legend. The legend is to come.
Well said. Okay, guys. So I think we are done with all the nominations. Now what we'll do, as we promised in the beginning of the show, is pick our top innings from this entire list. I'll go with Yogesh first.
For me, for the overall contribution that Alistair Cook had, I'm going to choose his innings as a captain, as a batsman. Let's remember this, that what Steve Waugh couldn't and what Ricky Ponting couldn't, Sir Alistair Cook could.
Okay, fair enough. Mahesh?
No prizes for guessing my preference. It has to be KP.
The one on top of KP.
Impact he had. What happened? They were coming after a defeat from Ahmedabad, so the morale of team would have been down.
Yep.
It was a series-defining innings because from there onwards, things changed for England. They won in Mumbai, they won the next match, and they won the series. So to me, it has to be KP's innings.
Fair enough. So we have KP, we have Sir Alistair Cook. So I was a little confused in my top innings, to be honest, because so many good performances there, and I personally wanted to choose Steven Smith, honestly, because he was. I mean, I saw it, and I had a bit of a personal bias there. But if you ask me, in terms of impact and in terms of a touring South African team coming and playing spin in India that well, I would have to choose Hashim Amla. And I think I haven't seen any other South African batsman in India play spin with such conviction. Being born and bred on wickets that are bouncy, fast, and seam and everything. But this guy, to me, is an all conditions player.
Perfect cricketer.
Yep. Okay, guys. So I think that concludes our discussion for today with the nominations and the topic that we chose. Thank you very much for your thoughts and your observations. And I think you guys brought out some really good points. And something which obviously a lot of cricket fans may not have known because of like I said, you had a personal bias, Mahesh, of being at the ground for that particular innings. I had for Steven Smith, and Yogesh brought out some really really good anecdotes from what all he's observed in the last 20 years as a fan and as well as a cricket observer. So yeah, so I think that kind of concludes this show. Once again, I can't thank you guys enough for the fans who contributed on the social media platforms. And now that you know that we have an official Facebook page, we have a YouTube channel which we'll put up the show on, and we have Instagram, we have Twitter. Please feel free to sending your thoughts, your comments, your feedbacks, your brickbats. Happy to hear what you liked about the show, what you did not like about the show, what you feel could be added. We are always open to suggestions, guys. And like I said, this is a journey. We'll keep on improving. We'll keep on putting more and more thoughts into our stuff. And we would like to hear from you. Before we conclude, time to declare. I think what you see on the screen, a controversial image, and that kind of gives you a very good perspective about what is going to come up next week in terms of the player who's not in the picture but would be in the picture for a topic of discussion next week. So yeah, I think that gives you a fair idea. And we will definitely announce the topic for next week's discussion on social media within a day or two. The first priority would be to put out this video on social media after our discussion, and then get your comments. Once we read your comments, then we'll also innovate and also look at putting some of the feedback that we received, and then of course we will discuss this topic in the next episode of Timber Cherry and Timber Talk. So thank you guys, thank you Yogesh, and thank you Mahesh. Really appreciate your time, and I will stop sharing my screen for now so that we can just say
thank you,
goodbye, and thank you guys.
Bye. See you soon.
See you next
yes,
week.
speak soon, bye.